Today I'm making this tabletop artist's easel for my daughter. This is a pretty basic project and it doesn't require a whole lot of tools. I still started in SketchUp as that helps me visualize the project and sort out some of the dimensions that I want to work with. I didn't nail down every detail, but I got in enough details to get going, and none of the dimensions are really that critical. Now as you can see, like there and over there and over behind the dust collector, back there, you know, I've got a whole bunch of scrap hardwood because I've been doing this for years, and I've got a shop full of tools, and I'm going to use the wood and the tools for this, but you could just as easily go to the home center and pick up some 1x2s and cut this up with a handsaw. It's that simple of a project. Now if your name was John, you might choose to make this out of some scrap pieces of plywood that you've got lying around. Whereas if your name was Matthias, well, you'd probably be disassembling some IKEA furniture that you found on the side of the street on trash day. I think I'm going to use some, I'm just going to knock things all over the place, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use some bits of ash or oak that I've got lying back here. That should do just fine. So I've got this nice piece of thick oak that I've picked out to use for the shelf, the part that holds the piece of artwork on the easel. Now this is nice and thick. I cut it. It's a little over 1.25 inches in thickness, 3 inches tall. And I'm going to take some progressive cuts on the table saw on the edge here, so I end up with a little L-shaped area so that it's just a little lip on the front to hold the piece. I don't really know if it's necessary. Now, if you were doing this out of 1x2 pine or something from the home center, you could just take 2 pieces and, you know, put it together like that and you'd have the same effect. But again, I've got the tools in the wood, so I'm going to use it. But you don't have to. Now, if your name is Dustin, this thick piece is probably where you'd hide the secret compartment. So it's an easel, which means it's going to be tipped when it's in use. So I'm adding just a 10-degree cut on the bottom of the 2 front legs and the 1 back leg, which should just help it sit a little bit more stable on the table. I hope. Okay, so the parts go together something like this. Cross piece on the top. That's the back leg, so we don't worry about that right now. 1 leg, 2 legs, cross piece about 5 inches up from the bottom or so. And this is the center support. And this is the artwork support, sort of the bottom. And this is adjustable up and down depending on the size of the piece. This piece is going to have a bunch of holes down the center, and a matching hole goes in here, and then this can be clamped at differing heights all the way up. Everything else pretty much is oak. Got a nice piece of maple here, just to give it a nice contrast. Now if your name was Matt, for your feature piece, you'd pick something with some nice crotch grain and you'd be pouring mineral spirits over it to show off the grain. Wow! Look, there's some voids here that you could fill with epoxy too. I'm going to set my combination square to about 1.5 inches. And a nice sharp pencil here. And I can draw a line right down the center of this piece. Oops, right down the center. And I'm going to, well, it's going to be there. So I'm going to start at about the 3-inch mark. And I think every 3 inches should give us plenty of adjustability here. And a matching hole needs to get drilled in this piece as well. I've got this box full of jig parts. So I'll be using a bolt and a nut for attaching these two together. So let's get some holes drilled. So here's the support, and I used a Forstner to cut a little countersink in there, and that goes like that. And then once it's all together, go like this. There we go. And that makes a nice tight connection. Okay, so I flipped it over so that the legs are down. Now let's get it put together. And I've got some glue, and I have a nail gun, so that's what I'm going to use, but you could just use you know, screws or nail and hammer, or really glue and clamp should be strong enough. But and this is another one of those continuing saga about how I view plans as guidelines, because I looked at this and I thought, you know, what if I put a smaller... If you're working on a smaller piece of artwork, I didn't want it to fall into these gaps, so I just quickly ripped a couple of more strips. Just fill it in, and I thought it looked kind of nice too. Now we got the easy part out of the way. The hard part is now the hinging and the holding. Let's work on that. So, and no, I'm not suddenly deciding to make a canoe paddle. What I am is being cheap and frugal, because I've got this sort of random old hinge left lying around. And I'm going to use that, but for that I need this to be wider at the top. This is the back leg of the easel. Just going to glue this in and put it aside. Now I know it's kind of silly to use a door hinge on something this lightweight, but I've got one, you know, and it's just sitting here, so why not make some use of it? Okay, almost done. Here's the front. Now let's come around, look at the side. So I got the hinge up here, so this tilts back. Now you need to connect this somehow. I mean, I could use a chain or something, but I wanted it to be pretty solid, so I got a piece of maple and I routed a little slot in it, cut it down. And I'm going to fasten that here. I put a little block here on the back so that I can then put a knob in there and bolt it in there nice and securely. So then I should be able to... That should be a nice solid, it's slightly adjustable. It's still a bit of an experiment, so see how my daughter likes it. adjust it shorter, adjust it longer. Most importantly, I can lock it. I'm not really sure the adjusting is that important, but that nice and solid, not going anywhere. Yeah, I think I've been slacking off a bit on the easy for the beginner aspect of it. Again, all of this could have been built just with pine 1x2s from the home center. You don't need to buy a box full of jig hardware. I just happen to have it because I bought it for other purposes around the shop. You know, you could have just taken a piece of wood and cut a series of notches in it. And then you could have that here just hooking over a screw. Or again, you know, you could just use a chain. This is just a screw here, and you know, that's just a cheap door hinge. And this here, this knob that I have, again, is one of these nice jig parts. But again, just run to the home center, pick up a bolt and a wing nut. Still very much doable as a beginner project. But you know, if you have the fancy wood, why not fancy it up a bit like I did? So off camera, I took it out to the garage and I hit it with a few coats of spray lacquer and it turned out great. I think it looks good, it's functional. This is a good stopping point for the project, but I'm not stopping here. It's an easel, it's an artist's easel. It's a tool, sort of like those canoe paddles that I made. It looks good, but it's going to get beat up with use because that's its purpose. And this was running through my head as I'm planning the project, and I sort of, as I'm working through this, I thought, you know, if it's going to get splattered with use, why don't I splatter it now? And I just thought that might make for a fun look to have a pre-splattered paint easel. Why not? I'm going to give it a try. So I got into my wife's stash and I got a bunch of these acrylic paints, and of course I practiced because you could call me an artist in wood, but I am not practiced in working with paints, and I tried a little piece here where I splattered a bunch just sort of to get, actually it's upside down, can't you tell? To get a bunch of look at how things could turn out and just to see how the paint went, and it's pretty. So I put some paper down, I've got the easel laying flat, the art support piece, I have that underneath so I can pick up splatters as I go over it. I'm mostly just focused on the front. I'm not going to try to get it all around. And okay, I think it's time for the time lapse. Now, I'm sure many of you are expecting me to make a joke about people named Steve painting things purple. But really, he only did that in one or maybe two projects. Now, Tyler and Bob, those guys seriously love their orange. When do you stop? That is the question. Do I want any other colors? On my practice piece, I had just 4 colors. And here I've got 4 colors. I don't know if I want any more. Think, 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 think. Yeah, stop. Stop, stop, stop. Stop or I'm gonna ruin it. Stop or I'm gonna ruin it. And so here's the end result, which I think turned out great. I have to tell you, I was really nervous when I started splattering the paint on it, but yeah, I'm really liking it. Against the pale maple, I really think the bright colors look really nice with the sort of the random streaks and splatters, and even the oak. I mean, it's a fairly light colored finish on it, and I think the paint works. It works for me. I really like it. And you know, I hope my daughter likes it too. But that brings us to the end of this project. As always, I'd like to thank you for coming by and spending some time in my shop with me. I hope you found something interesting and enjoyable. Big thanks to all the people who made it right to the end of the video. Oh yeah, a reminder, all my social media stuff, those links are in the description below, and also in the description below are links to all the YouTube channels of those guys that I made a little bit of fun of over the course of this video. They're a bunch of great guys. Check out their channels, lots of good stuff there. And speaking of subscribing, remember to subscribe to mine if you feel I've earned it, and either way, I'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.